This conference will
Hi.
now be recorded.
Thank you. I'd like to call the September 28th, 2020 workshop session to order at 6:30 p.m. And are there any additions or removal agenda items tonight?
I have none.
Okay, go ahead, Dale.
I'll move to accept the agenda.
Thank you, Dale. Is there a second? A second to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll second.
Thank you, JR. Would you call the roll, please, Stephanie?
Counselor Wagner,
Thank you. I am here and I,
Counselor Webb,
Aye.
Counselor Allen,
Aye.
Mayor Hobart,
Aye.
Counselor McNair.
Yay.
You said aye.
Yes.
Okay. Motion carried.
Thank you, Stephanie. New business, city council roles and responsibilities discussion. So, I know we've had at least one work session on updating our council rules, et cetera, and discussing them. I really think it's a great idea from time to time to you know, even if we don't talk about the council rules, is for everyone to read the city charter and the council rules periodically. And I also found your League of Cities handout quite helpful, Stephanie. After reading through it, and I just thought that the communications page, the key to success, was very helpful, and it talks about council member responsibilities and meeting guidelines and code of conduct, and after reading those, it kind of reinforms what we're here for and why we're here for, and how we go about doing our city business. So that handout that I really enjoyed from the League of Cities could be found on page 10. I thought there was a lot of good information there that corresponds to our own council rules. So do you remember, Stephanie, how far we got with, we did update our rules, and I signed it. With the resolution 2020-05. So I don't know if there's any more work to do on that, or it's just kind of a review or discussion. If anyone has any discussions on resolution 2025 or 2020-05. Anyone like to discuss it, or are you happy with it, or It's up to you guys. That's about all I have to say, opening this up, so.
Mayor Hobart.
Yes, Counselor Allen.
I was kind of curious of who is bringing this forward and what they or them was hoping to achieve.
Go ahead, Counselor Wagner.
So this is Counselor Wagner. We had a discussion about, and it was likely me who had at least brought it up, that council at times gets into things that really is not our business. And although it's not why this particular meeting was requested a year or so ago, whenever that was, or when we first added it to our workshops. But my question is, if we are on a conversation that really isn't in our realm of things to be addressing to the level that we're addressing it, and if the mayor doesn't step in and say anything to redirect us, or the president doesn't step in to readdress us, to refocus us onto what our roles are, who should we as council look to who will guide us in that?
I can answer that, Susan.
Okay.
I think in our charter or council rules, it states that all councilors are to help maintain the procedures and rules along with the mayor. So,
but if we do not feel comfortable making that statement, because we may not be as familiar with process and procedure as we should, or we feel that that it is not our place to make that statement, who can? I mean, I would like to know if we could rely more on our city recorder or our city manager when there are issues like that, when it really isn't our business to be addressing. That's why I'm talking about, that's why I wanted to know what our roles and responsibilities are as it relates to, in a formal meeting, or in a formal workshop, to say, okay, this is my job to be paying attention to and bringing up the minutia of, but not these other things.
right. Okay. Thank you, Susan, for that clarification. I think I was actually thinking the same thing. Our city recorder probably knows the rules better than most of us, at least for me, I could say. So I could use all the help that anybody's willing to give me on help remind me of some of the rules and procedures. So I think just reading this through a few times a year is probably helpful as well. And I've been trying to do that. So thank you for bringing it up.
You're welcome, and thank you for reading them. I don't read them as much as I should.
Go ahead, Counselor Webb.
So I'm trying to remember back. I remember the one time this came up, seemed like it was that agreement with the state for archiving, and one of the counselors wanted to see a contract or something like that. I remember that was one instance, and correct me if I'm wrong, Susan. I know there was some discussion whether we were getting into uncharted territory or into a place that we didn't belong. But then there were some of us who were thinking that no, this is getting the necessary data to make an informed decision. And I think all counselors have a right to make sure that they've seen all the data, and I guess, you know, some of that goes back then. The council needs to, as a whole, needs to ask for it, not individually, but kind of clarify, wasn't that kind of the issue at one time?
That was significantly post when we had originally talked about needing to have this discussion. I think, in all honesty, that, again, you know, Zoom meetings are harder with things like this, because I think what we had kind of hoped for was I don't know how to say this, a more not a robust and thorough discussion about truly what our roles are, whose role it is to do what, and have that led by either Stephanie or the city administrator or another party. I don't know who it is that's best to have to be that, if you want to call it facilitator, just the leader of that conversation, because I think this is, unfortunately, if none of us are really recalling why we wanted to have this particular workshop, I think we're probably just going to spin our wheels. That was my recollection of why we were going to have it, so that we could really have a specific nuts and bolts. This is what my role is as a counselor, and this is what, and I know that those lines are not absolute as to what I should or should not be talking about in a meeting, you know, how much I should delve into, you know, whichever project I have a question about. But just generically, I think that we as counselors need to be reminded, I know I do, is what is my job? What am I really supposed to be doing sitting up there making decisions? But when does it become weeds? You know, when have I gotten into the weeds? When have I gotten into staff's business that I really shouldn't be? You know, when am I asking for too much information? When should I be sending an email that says or stopping into city council, you know, into chambers, not chambers, stopping by city hall and saying, I'm confused about this project, or I have a question about this project, or sending a letter to the mayor saying, I'd really like more information about this project. Can we bring this to the next city council meeting? I'd like more details about X, Y, or Z. And I think that's the conversation I was hoping to have today. And if we're not really prepared to have whatever conversation everybody thinks we're having tonight, with an election coming up and bringing new counselors on potentially, do we simply say, maybe we put this off until after the election so we know whether we should have this workshop now, or hold it when we have new members potentially on council?
Stephanie, you had your hand up right at the same time Susan did. Did you? I'll get to you in a minute, Dale. Did you have something to add to that, Stephanie?
I think it's continued past the contribution that I had, unless you have any direct questions for me at this point.
Okay, all right. Okay, Dale.
So again, I'm trying to get, so that one instance we had, and it's just, I'm using it for an example, where one council member was requesting more information. Isn't it incumbent upon the body then to, isn't it us? I'm not real comfortable having the CA or the recorder calling these shots unless we're getting into a legal ground that they know we're stepping over. But when we're asking for information to make a decision, it shouldn't be just one counselor. If they want that, then it should be the consensus of council. We're making that decision that, yes, we want to task staff with providing this to us. I mean, in that instance, it was, we tabled that. We were coming back to try to make a more informed decision. And you can only do that if you have the data. I can probably cite examples with the Public Works Committee when I was on there, trying to get data for sewer and water or different things. And yeah, where you're stepping over the line, but if you're trying to make informed decisions, you have to have the data. I don't think staff should, if the whole of the council or even the majority of the council saying, no, we want this provided, we're making the decision at that point. We're directing. Am I wrong?
No, I don't think you're wrong that it's incumbent upon us to seek out information. But I think that there comes a point at which we as counselors are getting into the nitty-gritty details when that should be either a committee discussion or a direction to staff to provide the information, and we give them broad parameters and they give us their informed recommendations, because they're the ones who know what's going on at the city, what best would fit in whichever place. You know, let's talk about the faucets. You know, the city staff are the ones who know all about what faucets should probably go where. And or you know, a discussion about computers. You know, again, I made that mistake. I should not be sitting here looking online, well, there's this price for this one or that price for that one. I should simply have said, I think it's a great idea. Can you please bring back to council some recommendations? Because, you know, what I think would be nice in a bathroom is different than what Dale would like, maybe, and what Josette thinks would be best. And if we're, you know, that creates potentially a very long conversation that's not appropriate for during city council. One of the things St. Helens does is they have a city council workshop every afternoon. I think it's at 1, before their city council meeting. So they can have those discussions, those detailed discussions, if they have lots of questions or suggestions or whatever. And then during city council is the time when they say, it's obvious that we as council have some concerns about this particular purchase or this proposed idea. Would you be willing to please, you know, bring back some ideas based on, you know, we would like to see the alternatives for the faucets or the computers or whatever, because we're just, you know, or we think it's a terrible idea or we think it's a good idea, but we'd like some feedback as to why staff thinks it's a great idea or a bad idea.
Stephanie?
I think this discussion goes way back to a perfect example of the broken swing set. And 4 out of the 5 of the body gave their suggestion on how to fix it, rather than saying it needs fixed, period. So it's getting into those details of, I think you should fix it this way, or I think you should trim this tree this way, or we want to start irrigating the field and I want you to do it this way, but then this counselor wants you to do it this way or that way. It's getting into those, it goes way back to where, and I think there has been improvement. I think we can, and anybody can see that. As far as those more minute things, those are the things that Councilor Wagner touched on that should be, and I don't remember who it was, so I'm not going to get into that, but that should be a phone call or an email or stopping by City Hall, and rather than waiting 2 weeks to bring that to a meeting to say there's a broken branch in this tree, do you think you could fix it? Or this piece of park equipment is broken, do you think you could fix it? Those kinds of things. And then the examples of this counselor thinks you should fix it that way, this one thinks you should fix it that way, or the mayor thinks you should fix it this other way. It's the nitty-gritty details. Not so much, I understand wanting to go back to the contract. I do think that all went down, it was tense. I think everybody can agree on that. But you're right, you do have a right to know more information about what you guys are voting to approve, because you're deciding policy. You should know what policy it is that you're deciding. There's ways that could have improved, but we can only move forward. I think if you guys all, again, I'm not trying to steer this, but if all of you have concerns about something and then you decide as a body that you want that information to come back, rather than, historically in the past, way past, where one has concerns but the whole body doesn't decide what they want. I think the body and staff are getting better at saying, okay, but what does everybody want? And then you guys move forward that way. That's it.
Thank you, Stephanie. For me, it's I look at my job description as a mayor and what that entails, and it's it's, and for the council too, it's about taking a personal responsibility for preparedness for the next council meeting, and be prepared, and what I started three months ago with having an agenda meeting with the city administrator the Monday prior to the council meeting has helped somewhat, I believe. And then maybe taking those concerns that individual counselors may have, they could shoot me an email or talk to me and get it on the agenda in that avenue and way of doing it. But I think it's about each counselor taking a personal responsibility to be prepared. And then once we get to the meeting, if prior to the meeting, if you have questions, find out the answer to those questions before we go into the meeting. Might make our meetings a little bit more fluid. Um, Anybody else have something to add there?
I see Counselor Webb's hand.
Counselor Webb, the internet's really blurry right now tonight. I don't know if
That's
you're
bad
having
on
the
mine.
same problem.
Can't hardly see half their faces.
Go ahead, Dale.
So, yeah, I agree, Rick. I mean, coming to the meetings prepared, and like you said, trying to get in, and if you do have questions. But I think there's a lot of times discussions evolve on us, and I like the workshop idea, and we've heard that from other cities that they do the workshop before their meetings. But that's just not going to happen probably here in Vernonia with our current council makeup. That it's just impossible for that to occur. That would really probably help clear up a lot of things, and they wouldn't come out in the meeting. But I'm a little concerned that we don't get to the point that we're in the meetings and all these things are already predetermined. We're kind of moving towards that area where, if I'm somebody sitting there in the audience watching, and you're going to go, well, they already had their mind made up, and there's nothing wrong with having a good, clear back and forth with staff, fleshing some things out, and unfortunately for us, we're doing that in a meeting, and but it's a little more, it's transparent for the public to see that we are questioning things and aren't rubber stamping, the proposals. And so I think there's a balance there that we also have to be cautious of. I mean, if we did everything an hour before council meetings and we're hashing these things out and then coming into the meeting and go, yeah, we're all for it, and we never question anything, that could get troubling. So, I mean, I think there's been some really good, valid points made. We don't need to get into the mechanics of these specific items. We just direct staff. We want it done. That is our job, is to give them guidance. What our policies are and directives. And but when like looking at the contract, some wanted to see it, and it's really hard to say no. You don't have a right to see it. It is public information, and there did seem to be in that meeting. I remember there was some pushback that we didn't need to see it, and it was like, no. I'm sure we could have had a council vote at that time and just said no, we want to see it. So yeah, clear lines. I'm sure Susan's correct. It's not a black and white line for us, but like Stephanie pointed out on the swing set, which Stephanie, it is broke again. But I'm not going to tell you.
I was going to ask you.
But yeah, we don't all have to take up council time of suggesting how to fix it. That's a very valid point. And those probably shouldn't even be coming to council meeting. Those are an email to staff, the request for a work order to get something fixed, and then that's your job to take care of it. Okay, that's enough.
Thank you, Dale.
I
Anybody
totally
else?
agree. Yeah, Mayor, this is Councilor Al. I totally agree with Councilor Webb on that. And sometimes it feel like you try to do your job and be thorough, and if there's a counselor or staff pushing back, why are they pushing back? Nobody here has anything to hide. There's no counselors here trying to play got you. We're all trying to do the best for Vernonia, and I just don't see the point in it. So to me, it gets either you're a counselor or you're staff. You can't be both.
Thank you, JR. Go ahead, Dale.
Because, and I think that's kind of hitting on the key point. And I think when we see that, our responsibility as council is to withdraw from that conflict, internalize it. It's the council. You know, Councilor Allen, you want to see that contract. Do we want a consensus from council to see the contract? Don't get into the fight with the staff person over it or another counselor over it. Just see if the rest of the council wants it, and then we direct it. That's pretty cut and dried at that point. I think that's where we get in trouble, is where we get in the back and forth going, and we need to just kind of pull back, and this is what I'd like to see, and what do you think, and go from there, get a consensus.
Dale, I don't think I was the one actually demanding to see any contract. I might have mentioned if we had the right to see it. I know I have the right to see it. I could do a public request.
Yeah, and I wasn't actually you, and Councilor McNair's been pretty quiet tonight, so I'd like to hear his perspective.
Stephanie, go ahead.
I agree. When we get into between staff and counselor to counselor, or even staff to staff, start to get into that question and drilling, asking all the specific questions, but the rest of the body isn't contributing, then it starts to build that tension and defensiveness. And I think if we, like Dale said, pull back and evaluate the situation, even maybe take a minute and say, all right, does the body want this? Yes or no? And everyone has to speak. Then that will save a lot of that back and forth and kind of building that angst or tension. Yeah, I think that's a great recommendation.
Thank you, Stephanie. Now, as mayor, I'm going to try to be a little bit more in tune with that. Characteristic, if you will, and try to maybe get the council back on track with the asking for a consensus, and rather than getting bogged down in the weeds, which we sometimes do. But it's a transition for me too, and my main focus is to stay on task, stay on the agenda, and you know, that's my main goal, is to conduct the council meetings as best I can. So I will try to do my due diligence to conduct the meetings in a although I think I'm pretty prepared when I come to the meetings, and I just try to do my best. And so. Anything else? Does the council have a general consensus to kind of end up this meeting, or go ahead, Dale?
Well, I was just wondering if Bruce is with us, because I haven't heard from him tonight. I see he's got a phone on, but I haven't heard anything.
Oh, I'm listening.
I'm going to throw out a hypothetical here just to kind of see where we're at. So if the individual counselor is seeing something that puts the city at risk, something that's a big liability concern, you know, and staff's aware of it, and we're not thinking it's being taken care of in a timely manner. So how do we go about that? I mean, I ain't going to go any further on that. It just, you know, how do you bring it to the mayor? Do we bring it to other councilors? How do we address that?
Susan, do you want to, I guess your hand was up, I'm not sure.
No,
You
it
guys hear me?
wasn't.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay, I think we
Stephanie,
might have
it
lost
says,
some people.
well, Stephanie, it says the organizer is experiencing technical difficulties. Unless the organizer rejoins, the meeting will end in 60 minutes. I see you, Dale, Rick, Bruce is still on, and JR is still on.
Counselor Allen, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Counselor McNair, are you here?
No, I'm at my house.
Okay, I think it's just the internet on the platform. I think we're okay. I just can't see everybody.
Okay.
Continue on.
Did you say hang on?
No, continue on. I think we're good.
Okay. So, Dale, your hypothetical brings to mind something that did occur that I think was another one of the items that was an impetus for this meeting. It depends what you mean by, puts the city at risk, whether it's a physical risk, legal risk, just something the counselor perceives as a risk. If it's a physical risk, I think it's brought up in an email specifically to the mayor and to the city administrator, and you could CC the city recorder. If it's a physical, like a tree is leaning over the road. Again, an immediate contact to the city administrator and is in that case the appropriate method. Maybe what we need is kind of a chart, which the city may already have, that says, if there's this kind of an emergency, this is who you call. So maybe for council, we need something that says, if we see something dangerous, there's a wire down, there's an open exposed box on Main Street, there's a tree limb about to fall off of the tree next to Meyer Auto Body. There's kids on the dock that shouldn't be. I mean, we need maybe an idea and kind of like a hierarchy of who we call when. I mean, if it's physical danger, you call 911, let the police know, who will then make a decision as to who they should call. I mean, just like with any other situation we see in town that might be a dangerous situation, I think we have it ingrained in us. If you see a car crash, you call 911. If you see a house on fire, you call 911. If you see Joey crossing the street when he's not supposed to, you call Joey's mom. That kind of thing. I'm not sure that that answered your question, but the other thing I think that it's important to remember is that we are just counselors, or just quote unquote just counselors, or just the mayor, and that it really is not our job to physically intervene in any situation, because that, in my mind, puts the city at huge risk, because if something happens, then the city, someone related to the city has done something and inserted themselves into a situation that potentially could result in a lawsuit or whatever. I'm not sure if that helped at all.
Yeah.
Go
I mean,
ahead, Dale.
I think hopefully all of us understand the basic principles of individually seeing things, and a lot of it's just work requests. But if we're seeing something that's an imminent physical threat, say to the public, and staff's aware, but I mean, I'm moving this up the ladder a little higher. So we're not seeing, say we don't see the reaction that we think we should be seeing. Then how do we, because is it not our responsibility as a counselor of the city to safeguard the city against this potential threat? And again, it's that level of escalation of, I mean, would we, the mayor's in the loop. If he concurs, then do we have an emergency meeting to address that issue then with staff? Is that the proper procedure?
Go ahead,
Mayor, how
Susan.
about,
So the one thing I would caution about is, simply because we are not seeing it dealt with in the time frame we think it should be dealt with, doesn't mean it's not actually being dealt with. And I'm sorry that I kind of went in a circle on that. Many times the boss has already dealt with it and addressed it. We just don't know that. So that's why I would just be very cautious of escalating anything without again, addressing it with that staff member, presumably the city administrator, to say, I brought this to your attention. I just want to make sure it's being dealt with. Then if it's not, at that point, I think potentially you would have the right to go to the mayor and say, Mr. Mayor, I'm really concerned about this. I saw it. I feel it's an emergent issue. It's very dangerous. This is why I brought it to the attention of the city administrator. I don't know. I don't know if that is the process. I think if we are going down that road, I think we need to have a hierarchy chart or a policy that says this is how we address things that we are concerned are, as well, I don't know, or is it a citizen? I don't know. Stephanie's got her hand up and she's probably got a better answer than I do.
Well, I know that, but Councilor McNair chimed in too, right at the same time you did. So go ahead, Bruce.
thank you, Rick. I appreciate that.
Welcome.
The one thing that everyone has to keep in mind, in my view, is that the powers that are inherent in councilmen, each individual councilman is as a group, not as an individual. So if you want to run a deal down, like the example that was given, you bring it to the attention of the person that's we've designated to be in charge of the city administrator. If no satisfaction occurs there, then you get it put on the agenda and we deal with it as a group. So it seems rather simple to me.
And
Okay.
I think what I started to say or think about, and then did not actually speak out loud is, are we acting as counselors or are we acting as a citizen pointing out that there's a problem? So again, I think that's the differentiation. As a city councilor, we deal with the business of the city. If there is something dangerous that we have reported, it is as a citizen observing something that's a problem. And I think that's where we need to, again, differentiate our roles between citizen and counselor.
Stephanie, go ahead, Stephanie.
So I think what Dale's hypothetical is if something is a issue, has been requested to be taken care of and it's not being taken care of. Is that what you're saying, Dale? Or Councilor Webb?
Correct.
So in that case, if say it's a imminent threat, it is bad. It's a clear danger, and then that counselor would discuss it with the mayor. The mayor will get a hold of the city recorder, and the city recorder will schedule you a meeting. In this situation, it's not something that would wait for 2 weeks. I'm your guys' secretary. I can schedule you guys a meeting in, it could be 24 or 48 hours. And that's where you guys would discuss it and say, this must be done in this amount of time. And if it's not, because you'd be giving direction to your employee who would have it taken care of. If it's not, then that's when you guys go through a not fun process. So we'll just assume that would never happen.
Like we lost a couple counselors, Stephanie.
I lost you. But your video, or your voice is still here.
There's Bruce.
You're still on, Bill.
Back. Man, things are going, my screen's just going crazy.
Yeah. Did everybody hear me?
Yep.
I did.
Okay.
But
I did,
So-
Stephanie.
my question again then goes back to, are we reporting something as a citizen observing something that is a imminent danger? Or I guess I'm not understanding how being a counselor. So I think
Let me add to my example.
thank you.
This is a hypothetical. There's a playground. There's a tree that has been identified as a danger tree and it will hurt a child. Now, there's a large branch or part of that tree is hanging over the playground. It is going to fall, or the tree is undermined or something, and it's still not being addressed. That's when you as a council, because you have requested that to be done, that's when you step in. If you see a house fire, you call 911, like you said. If you see a trip hazard, you call City Hall and get it taken care of. You know, those little things. It's the big things you guys have directed staff to do. And now it's a clear danger to the physical well-being of your citizens. Hypothetical.
I think in the final,
Are you there, Bruce?
Go ahead, Bruce.
Yeah. well, I think in the final analysis, as to the question, as a counselor or a citizen, you have, as a single counselor, you have no more power than a citizen does. It's the power that the individual counselors have lie within the group, and the group is the one that has the power. You have to have a 3-1, a 3-0, or a 3-2, or you have to have a majority of the council agree to what's considered that danger. I guess if you want to nail down this hypothetical to each particular, like a framework or something, that's one thing. But ultimately, in the end, the individual has no more power than any other citizen in the city of Vernonia. The power that lies inherently in the group.
Go ahead, Dale.
Um,
With Susan, I'm trying to. There's a legal aspect to this, which we don't have our city lawyer online, but I would view it. If you're a city councilor and an imminent threat is pointed out to you, you are now aware of this imminent threat. And being that you are a councilor and sworn to protect your citizens, I think then it's incumbent upon you to act. If you fail to act, I think then you become culpable. So I think that's why I'm kind of asking this question is, it's not a clear picture of, when we're a citizen and when we're a councilor at times. I think there's times that your responsibility, and that's why we're addressing this responsibility. If you're a councilor and this is pointed out to you, I think it's incumbent on you to take action at that point.
And what defined act?
Well,
Defined
and act is like we've been talking, making sure staff, city administrator is aware of the situation. But if in that capacity you've done that and things aren't happening that, and everybody's going to have their opinion if it's happening quick enough. But if it's not happening quick enough, then that's where I'm asking as a counselor, then we talk to the mayor, do we convene an emergency meeting? It kind of sounds like that's what Stephanie says is the proper procedure. The mayor would talk to the city administrator again, and if there's a roadblock there and we're aware of something that's imminent danger to the public, then I could see there again the responsibility of council is that you need to act.
And I agree, Dale. I will move forward, and the main thing is the hazardous situation gets addressed. And if we need to call a special meeting the next day, that's what we'll do, and then we'll get the council vote on it. It's a plan to move forward.
Easy breezy.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, Councilor McNair concurs with my analysis there, because this is where we get into trouble when we're not clear. Everybody's not clear of our roles and our responsibilities.
Well, I don't know how clear I can make it that I agree with what you're saying, and it goes to what I was saying is, as an individual councilman, you can't go direct the public works staff to go down there and remove that tree. You can't do it yourself in that sense. Well, I guess you could do it yourself, and we'd have to deal with it later. But ultimately, what I was trying to say is that the power that you have as a councilman is with the group, and ultimately that would be convening that meeting, would it not?
Yeah. Okay. So we're on the same page then, Bruce.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I just, so much of this, the conversation that's going forth, trying to take hypotheticals and gather some sort of overarching principles is kind of difficult to do. It's fairly simple.
Any other discussion? Anything else that we need to discuss on council roles and responsibilities?
I'd like to talk about one thing.
Go ahead, Councilor McNair.
I'd like to speak to the issue of individuals on the council bringing their own personal business into the city business. I'm going to have to reach for some words that define it better. Again, this goes back to me acting as a whole. And then once we identify a problem or we identify an issue, we allow the staff to react and do what they're supposed to do. When they don't react, and when they don't do what they're supposed to do, then we need to act at that time. But too many times I think that we get involved in issues that are ongoing within the community, and then we bring in people that we know or something, and we talk about issues that directly affect us. And we're there to represent the community as a whole, not ourselves or our neighbors or our friends.
Can you be a little bit more specific? Because I'm not quite sure where you're going with this, Bruce.
All right. Bear with me. This is not an attack on anybody. But the tree down here at the school, the old school site, the Spencer Park, one of the council members brought up, they had their own individual person go down and look at it. I think that's overstepping your responsibilities or your powers. You should be allowing staff to do their work in terms of they're able to, they have to follow certain criteria. They have to get 3 bids. They have to do certain things that supersede what we as individual counselors would like to happen, if you gather what I mean.
I understand.
That's one example, but there's quite a few of those examples have happened over the past couple of years. So that causes a lot of issue with staff itself, the feedback I get. That to me is where you're starting to step into territory that really doesn't belong to us as councilmen. That goes more towards what Councilman Wagner was talking about. I don't know if anybody else wants to add to that or detract from it. Hear the crickets chirping.
I'll chime in on that, Mayor Hobart.
Go ahead, Councilor Allen.
Sometimes it seems like we have a mayor or a councilor or whatever down at the lake or whatever your interest is, and you're honestly just trying to help the city or help something along. And I understand not everything is that place, but to nitpick people or counselors or somebody on some of this is just insipid to me. And if you want someone that doesn't care, that's what you're going to end up with if you keep pushing agendas like this of just boxing up everybody to sit in a corner and vote yes or no. And that's what you're going to end up with ultimately. So we got to be careful of this road we're going down where we can't question staff, we can't talk to them, we're getting in trouble constantly. That's kind of the feeling it's been since I've been on council. And, I'm being honest here. there are certain council members that have tried to box me in to just sit there and do nothing. And, it's frustrating. And certain council members have better powers or relationships or time to hang out in the office and direct staff in a different way of things that they'd like to see done. And we all know who they are. So let's not
Well, just say
pretend.
who they are.
I'm just not going to pretend that I'm going to sit in a corner and do nothing. And I'm not saying anything about the trees or anything. I think we're all here to help. And I think that's the main point, that I don't want this meeting to go down an ugly road when we're all here to try to learn. And I'm willing to learn. I'm trying to do a better job every week in this town. And I think that my mayor is too. So to bring up the tree kind of strikes a little bit of a nerve with me. It seems like we pick on our mayor at times when he's the best mayor I've remembered in a long time, in my opinion, as far as helping and doing things for this community. And that's all I'm going to say for tonight.
Go ahead, Stephanie. I saw you had your hand raised.
So I'm feeling a little bit of defensiveness, and I just want to point out that maybe that's a perfect example of where staff was coming from with the contract, was feeling like, well, hey, why are you pointing at me all of a sudden? It's maybe we're just all have the best interest for the city, and certain examples are going to come up and they might hit home, and to just say, yep, that was me, and just internalize it, it's fine, and move forward. Trying to be the peacekeeper here.
I wouldn't,
Go ahead, Councilor Webb.
but I do think Bruce makes a point. Our role is not to troubleshoot each and every issue and have it figured all out for staff. It's our role is to bring it to staff, let them bring back the recommendations to us. And and if they bring back something that's counter that we have information, and then I guess we'll discuss it. But that's that fine line we're talking about, is when we get too involved and try to already make the decisions for staff or have it all laid out for them. That they're sitting there going, well, what do you need us for? So we just need to be conscious of that and be careful around that. If I see a danger tree, I'm not going to tell them how to cut that tree down or when they cut it down, or it's just that we see a danger tree and you should bring us back a solution. So, that's my 2 cents. And with the bidding laws the way it is, it's kind of a waste of time if we are talking to people, and it kind of muddies the water a little. I'm done.
Thank you. Any other discussion? And, I'd like to make one final comment before we close, if we choose to close, but I think every counselor here has their Vernonia's best interest. And that's the only way we can move forward and be an effective council and mayor for the community. So that's about all I have to say.
So am I incorrect that I thought you forward something on the minutes tonight?
No, I think that's something I didn't send you guys anything because I suspected that this would go longer, and I really want to send you guys information for you to review before the meeting and come into it expecting to discuss it. But also, do you guys still want to have that meeting? I don't know, because I feel like when you guys asked for that meeting, there was a lot of corrections, and now there haven't been very many. I don't know if you guys still want to have the work session or not.
Which meeting are you talking about, Stephanie?
To discuss how you guys want your meeting minutes to look.
Oh, okay.
Can I just get a consensus from the group, yes or no?
Before we do that, could you refresh my memory what the issue was?
I don't really know. There was some corrections that happened. I believe you were one of them, actually, Bruce, or Councilor McNair,
Right.
that was making corrections, which is fine. You guys should. And then it got added to the work session list, but I don't remember all of council wanting that. And I don't know if you guys are happy with them now, or if you want me to present what different kinds look like. I don't know. I don't want to waste your guys' time either.
I
Well,
remember what it was about, Counselor McNair, if you don't.
speak.
The issue that I remember was a counselor had no vote. And that counselor did not feel the meeting minutes adequately explained his dissent in the meeting minutes.
Yeah, and she corrected it, didn't she?
Yes. So does
So
that warrant?
I'm confused as to, I don't think I called for a workshop on this.
Counselor Wagner.
The reason council decided that it would be a good idea to have a workshop on minutes was for Stephanie or the recorder to provide us with examples of and discuss why minutes are the way they are, that they are very broad-based, and honestly, ours go further than probably should, because it isn't a transcription of what goes on in the meeting. It is a general idea of, this is what the subject was, there was discussion, and then if there was a decision made on that discussion or on that subject. A lot of minutes don't include any narrative at all. And the problem with when you provide narrative, like we do now, is one person, whether it's counselor, member of the public, or staff, could feel like the minutes aren't exact enough. They're not providing me what I wanted to see in them. That X subject was not detailed enough. So I think that was why we had decided that it was important to have a workshop that delved into that a little bit, so that we could get some instruction from our city recorder as to what minutes are, why they are formatted the way they are, what they should and should not contain, and then to agree that that was what we were going to have them look like. So that there wasn't the opportunity to say, well, I wanted more discussion in there on this particular item.
Well, whether the minutes are formatted the way that you spoke of, where it's just what the item was and what the votes were, or if there's something in between there that, which obviously we don't do just that. I guess with the help of Councilor Allen, I remember that particular issue. If you're going to give some kind of narrative, it should accurately reflect what occurred. That would be, thinking back on it, that would be my impression of what the problem was. But I don't know if that actually even goes to the point of what we're discussing. Either way, that sounds like you want to put it off, Stephanie, anyway. Am I correct?
Well, it's up to you guys. You guys can discuss it. If you want me to show you examples and reasons why, I'm happy to do that for you guys. I just, like I said, I don't know if that's what you guys want.
Councilor
Mayor
Webb,
Hobart?
you had your hand up? Councilor Webb, he had his hand up. Go ahead, Dale.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. I guess we have to make the decision how important it is to us, in the case that kind of helped bring this forward was a dissent in the vote. And that is in our council rules that we have the right of dissent after a decision, and when you're that person, and you're wanting to give a reason why you're dissenting, it's important to you. I don't know if it's going to be important 5 years down the road from now, and anybody's going to read these minutes, but it is concerning when our discussions, everybody has a certain flavor to their discussion, and when it's not really spelled out in the minutes, it's lost. I guess the audio record is there, but I don't know how long we keep those either. But if it were to come back again, that it's lost. So yeah, I don't know. It just seems like if somebody's got a dissenting opinion, it should be in the minutes.
Well, Dale, in the past, whether or not how often we use it, the taped minutes, they're destroyed within, what is it, Stephanie, 2 years? You keep them?
The recording is required to be held for 1 year. However, now all recordings are online, so those are up there for.
So they're part of the permanent record?
Yeah, they're online. They're on YouTube.
All right.
I don't think the most recent ones, but yeah.
Well, in the
Councilor
past,
Allen? Okay, go ahead, Councilor McNair.
well, in the past, I've noticed that staff mostly has used, the city administrator has used the record to go back and refer to decisions or reasons why. So if there is a certain amount of importance to it in that sense, and I agree with Dale that there should be the record should properly reflect the discussion. If you're going to do that at all, it should at least be that. Otherwise, you go to the format that Susan was talking about, where you just put down the header and the votes and be done with it. I don't know how that really. If you're going to archive this, how would that reflect the importance of it?
Counselor Allen, you were next. Sorry about
Yeah,
that.
I wanted to respond to Counselor Wagner's statement that the meeting minutes are, I forget her exact way of basically saying they're a skim of what happened. And since Counselor Wagner likes to compare to other councils or towns, I personally have read meeting minutes that are very, very detailed with pictures included. And as a citizen, I really appreciated that because it felt like I was at the meeting after reading those council minutes. So, and I understand we're our own council and we have our own staff and we're individuals and individual town, which I respect. So I don't want to get into the pigeonhole of they do it, so we do it type thing. But I just wanted to bring that point up that there's different views on meeting minutes and different councils in different towns, obviously.
Could you give me, you don't have to do it right now, but could you send me what city that is? That way I can include them in my research.
Counselor Wagner.
It sounds like we should have a discussion in a workshop about this. Just saying.
It's been my experience that if I have an issue with how the minutes are being recorded, I'm taking it to the city recorder, and they usually respond to your request, but I'm not asking for great big changes, format changes or things like that. So maybe that's not even conducive to what we're talking about.
Councilor McNair, you brought that up though right in open session, and we're breaking your own rule of basically go to staff if you have an issue. So we need to make up our mind what we can talk about in council, if that's the case.
Sorry, can I speak?
But what I'm saying, but I understand we review them before we approve them as a council, and that's our chance to have them edited or changed also. So when does the powers become an individual problem versus a council as a body problem?
Go ahead, Stephanie.
So the city council minutes are brought to you at your meetings for you to approve or disapprove. When they are put in your packet, that is your chance or the perfect opportunity for you to review them. If you disagree with something, get a hold of me. That way I can review the tape and I will bring the changes to the council meeting. Because questioning, I mean, sometimes, yes, we could say, most of the time, if you have a correction or you disagree with what was reflected in the minutes at a meeting, it doesn't give staff fair opportunity to bring forward what you are requesting, because then it just has to get put off to the next meeting. That's why those packets are sent to you on Wednesday, so that council can say, hey, I want to know more about new business A, or I don't think you accurately reflected what I said in the meeting minutes in this section, and then we can bring you forward those corrections. I don't know if that answered your question or not. Counselor Allen, did I answer your question?
Oh, yes. I didn't know you were speaking back to me. Yeah, I was happy with that. I think part of that conversation we had a month or two ago was getting the packets out on Wednesday, not Friday, which you have corrected. And I don't think there's really been an issue since. So I personally don't see a need to have a big work session on this issue, but that's up to council as a whole.
after hearing Stephanie's protocol on the meeting minutes and when they come out and review them, and if you have an issue, go to Stephanie or a question, and then when we come back in our council meeting, we, of course, it's part of our agenda to approve the minutes or have any discussion on minutes, and that's totally fine with me. I think Stephanie does a pretty good job in getting the minutes out bi-monthly, and that's the time to ask questions. I mean, or have further discussion on them in the council meeting. But is there a general consensus by council to continue with the way we've been doing it, or have another workshop to try to make it better?
I personally think we worked it out tonight.
Councilor McNair?
Why are you picking on me?
Trying to get a consensus, Councilor.
I think that at this time and moment, I'm happy with the way that the minutes are being put out. I had an issue with that one particular time, and it was rectified. I think that the main important thing, I think it's an ongoing process. It just, we make changes as we go. Whether or not a full-blown workshop is justified, I probably wouldn't. You probably wouldn't get my consensus on that.
Thank you, Bruce. Councilor Webb?
So how about this idea? Stephanie sounded like she was going to present some different cities' minutes to us. And what if she just went ahead and gathered some of those up and gave us examples? Because sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And so if we happen to see somebody else's minutes that the format we like better, then we could further this discussion. If we don't see anything that's any betterment for what we're already doing, then we drop it.
I'd have to agree with that.
Councilor Wagner?
I'm fine with whatever you all decide.
Okay. Doesn't look like we're going to have another workshop on council meeting minutes, Stephanie, right now, so.
No, so I will gather information and send it to all of you, or different examples, and then I'll bring you a staff report, probably not the next meeting, but the one following, and you guys can say, we don't want another meeting, or we don't want to change it, or yes, we want to have a work session.
Great, sounds good.
Perfect.
Anything else, Stephanie, on the docket?
Nope.
Okay.
Mayor Hobart,
Yes, Councilor Allen.
the way I just understood council, we said we did not want to have a meeting on an extra meeting on meeting minutes. And now we're back in a circle saying we may have another meeting. So I just want to get that clear. Are we having a meeting or a workshop or not?
We're not going to, at this time, schedule a workshop on meeting minutes. Staff is going to do some research on other city meeting minutes and bring those back to the October 19th meeting in their staff report for us to look at. We'll look at those, and if we want to change up our the way we do that, I guess we'll call for a workshop at that time. But right now, we're not having a scheduled workshop on meeting minutes right now.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Did that answer your question, JR?
Well, it did and it didn't. I guess
Yeah.
if we get into a huge discussion about format, then we'll have to have a format meeting. But I guess we'll leave that up to the council at the time of the 19th. So that's all I have to say.
Okay. Any other discussion on the workshop tonight? If not, I'll close this workshop session at 8 o'clock. Let's round it off to 8 o'clock. Meeting adjourned. Oh, Susan.
Mayor Hobart,
Yes,
are you going to be at the meeting on Monday?
I am.
Okay, perfect.
And I'm also going to be coming into City Hall tomorrow for a agenda meeting, hopefully,
Perfect.
in the morning. Yeah.
Have a good week, everybody.
Thank you.